Well, hello folks, and welcome to a Sportsman's Life. I'm Luke Clayton and my two good buddies,
Jeff Rice
and Larry Weisson, and we're so proud that you're with us this week. I'll be very honest with you, I have no idea where we're going.
There is no telling, but it's going to be fun.
We're going to have a good time, folks. Stay tuned. We have another great adventure on our Sportsman's Life coming your way.
One of the great things that happened to me is I was born into a hunting family.
You were.
I grew up in a situation where my granddad was a county commissioner, and from the time that before I could walk, they put me on their back and we'd go squirrel hunting. You know, my first memories are really beyond hunting. I can't even remember that far back. But my granddad would come by once I got a little bit bigger. He'd pick me up every morning. We'd go in our backyards and dig earthworms, and those earthworms were this long. Now, when you're this tall, they look this long, you know.
Yeah.
And we'd go fishing almost every day. So people ask, you know, what's your first hunting memory, first fishing memory? I can't remember that far back.
Right.
What about y'all?
Oh, I had a model childhood, early childhood, raised up in Red River County. My dad he used to work back in the day, he worked for Humble, you know, down around Baytown, and he sprayed tanks and all that. So my grandfather, who was a logging boss for Kurth Lumber Company, an old company, probably been gone forever. My grandfather was a logging boss, so he moved up to Red River County, pine trees, a lot of lumber in Red River County. So that's back when they would skid the logs with mules. This would have been back in the 40s. So he got established. I remember his little old cabin, and my step-grandmother, they lived back in the woods about 2 miles from where we lived. So my mother and dad decided they wanted to get out of the rat race. Could you imagine Baytown, Texas being a rat race back in about 1948? Yeah, I could. But that was what I was told. So they bought an old country store, the Dimple store, on Highway 37 north of Clarksville. Well, I'm sure my dad, it was probably like a new life for him, because he was used to the grind, you know, the factory type deal. I'm just assuming all this, but it had to be the way it was. So here, all of a sudden, he's the owner of an old country store. Gas pumps out front.
Oh yeah.
Feed room on the side. They've been like that a million years. So he ran the store for a few years, and then he got in the poultry business. That's back before when the poultry chicken business was getting started. And he had 2 big chicken houses, 14,000 chickens that we had every 9 weeks. It'd be
been there, done that. That's among other things that we did.
Yeah, that's
well,
right.
Too.
And so the outdoor part, where that came in. Now my dad was raised up on near the White River, up around Jonesboro, Arkansas. So he was already, I think he was like 39 when I was born. So he was a pretty good outdoors guy, but he was working his tail off.
Right.
Working as a chicken business.
But
when those chickens sold, here's where it started, the fishing part. When they sold, about every 9 weeks, had to clean up the chicken houses, get them done. That'd take a couple of days. My job was to take a 5-gallon bucket, put water in it, take a little old brim hook, and load it up with brim. So we took trot lines and we went to near Idabel, Oklahoma. Long Log Lake. I've never found it on a GPS. I did find a long lost lake.
Yeah.
Okay. So we would go, and it was literally loaded with channel catfish. Nothing big, you know. So we would get out there and catfish. We'd count 2 or 3 days. Wild strawberries were growing back in those days everywhere. I haven't seen one since, but a little about the size of your thumb. Little
I know exactly what
you
you're
ever
talking
seen
about.
one?
Oh yeah.
But they were
I've
everywhere.
seen them in Oklahoma, actually.
And the whole deal was to had an old 50 model international pickup that he called Old Red, and load everybody up, tarps and quilts and whatever. Get up there, get a campfire going, get those lines set out, and get enough fish to eat for that first meal. So that was the first outdoor stuff, and then squirrel hunting behind the house, and
Oh yeah.
by gosh, Red River County, anybody knows, but still it's pretty doggone rural up there, you know. But that's kind of where I started, and I remember the first deer count. My brother-in-law took me to Crook's Camp, probably 5 miles from where we lived. And in an old 56 Crown Victoria Ford with a police interceptor engine. Now we're going back, black and white. You know what I'm talking about.
I do know what you're
Two-tone.
talking about.
And that was our hunting car, quote. We pulled up in that camp, and there was probably 6 or 8 old boys, and I never ever playing cards. They had the 2 green army tents, had a game pole out there, and they had 2 bucks hanging up. Just bucks. You know, I remember them. You know, they
just buck only back then too.
yeah, but I mean, just little. You know, they weren't anything.
Yeah.
But I told my brother, and I was 11 years old. I said, I'm going to learn how to do this, and the deer. That's what started it, and it grew.
Oh,
And
yeah, just going into hunting camp and seeing deer hanging.
that
man.
planted
That
a
already gets you
seed
going.
that's still there.
Oh, absolutely.
And Jeff, you grew up in some awesome country in Wisconsin, and
Yeah.
you hunted a lot up in Minnesota and all up through there, didn't you?
Yeah, north central Wisconsin, and I mean, my father, my grandfather, my grandmother, big
Yeah,
hunters.
I've seen the pictures.
And Larry and I were talking last night about some of the old pictures that I have of them
I am so
hunting and
jealous over those,
fishing,
I'll
and
tell you.
it's amazing stuff. But I mean, so having grandparents and my father that lived and breathed outdoors, of course that's all I wanted to do. You know, when you're 8 years old or 9 years old, and you know you want to go. And the cool thing about it was they would always take me.
Yeah,
They wouldn't let me hunt because I was 8 years old, and they're like, "You're not shooting a gun at 8 years old. You've got to take, you know, hunter safety. Once you get past all that, you know, you're welcome
Yeah.
to go, and we want you to go." So they always took me on hunting adventures, and you really want to go
Oh,
because
yeah. Oh, yeah.
you're around
Oh
it.
yes.
And then eventually, you know, I got my hunter safety when I was 12. That's when you can take up there. You would be able to take hunter safety. So I took my hunter safety course, and it started right there. I mean, hunting, fishing. I was always out with either grandpa and grandma or dad or, you know, friends or whatever. And
Yep.
I mean, just squirrel hunting. You know, we would hit there's creeks, a lot of creeks up in Wisconsin where you can catch trout. And we would trout fish.
They would be
Oh.
naturally stocked.
Oh, yeah.
Just absolute blast. And then, you know, really started getting into the bird hunting, the ruffed grouse and the woodcock. God, those are fun, and that kind of gets you going. And my father bought me my first shotgun. It was a J.C. Higgins 12 gauge pump, and we would
Sears.
Sears.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Still have that gun, and
Oh man.
you know, it's a cannon. It's got a poly-choke thing on the
Poly
end of it.
choke.
Oh, but it is loud.
We're going back. Some of these youngsters, polychoke. What's that?
Yeah, exactly. But we would bird hunt and got really proficient at that. And my grandparents really loved to bow hunt, and my dad did as well. And they hunted with the traditional longbow. That was their thing. As a matter of fact, I have their bows.
Again, I'm jealous.
Yeah, it's just
I've
so
seen
neat. But
They're so cool.
I wanted to bow hunt. That was the one thing I really wanted to do, and I'll never forget my first bow hunt. My father took me on. We walked into this kind of a paper mill land, if you will,
Yep.
that we could hunt. And you know, we walked on this old logging road. Dad says, "No, you sit right there, and I'll come out and get you at dark, but you stay right there." And it was kind of in a crotch of a tree. You know, you could kind of sit up there. You were, 10 feet off the ground, but there was no stand. But I just kind of was able to get up there and sit. And I had a doe come in, and I was so excited. You know, your first deer, and I drew back, and of course this is a longbow I was hunting with, and I shot, and you know, I had shot a bunch, thought I was proficient at it, and you're not proficient until you Yeah, you're really hitting every time. And maybe it was the fact that there was an animal there in front of me, and I'm like 12 years old.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm aiming the best I can, and I let that arrow fly. And I'll never forget that arrow hitting that deer. And it didn't hit it in the spot I wanted to hit it in, unfortunately. But my dad and he came out right at dark. We looked for a bit. The next morning, he pulled me out of school. He took the morning off of work to teach me a lesson. Number one, you always look for that game. You know, if you hit it, you owe it to that game to go look for it and spend the time. We found some sign, found a little sign, never found that deer, but, you know, lesson learned right there. But that's kind of where it started with me, and you know, all the adventures throughout the years. You want to talk about memories? Just fantastic memories. And the cool thing is more to come. You know, that's Lord willing, we'll have more to come.
That's it. The older that I get, the more I think I think like most young guys, I went through a stage definitely in my 20s, and I maybe got out of it a little bit in my 30s where let's go, I want to fill these tags, by golly, let's go put some game on the meat pole.
It was all about that.
Yeah. It was all about that.
Sure.
I won't kid you.
No, I agree.
It was that way. Most young guys are. But now I've got to a stage where, yeah, do I love to hunt and get excited just as much as I ever did? I do. But like hanging with you guys, or you know, out fishing or whatever, that to me means every bit more, honestly, than getting the game.
Absolutely agree.
You know, it does. Yeah,
I do. It's the sitting around camp, last night talking, just the stories.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
Yes, the hunting is a big part of it. Sitting in the blind this morning, seeing a bunch of bucks, you know, chasing does and things.
Yeah,
I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. You know, you don't have to shoot. You don't have to release an arrow or fire a bullet to have a great time.
You don't, exactly.
You know?
I often wonder if you know, I've got buddies, although most of my close friends are outdoor, I guess you just gravitate to people that like the outdoors, the same stuff. I just wonder if other people have that kind, you know, say golfers or whatever, if they really get that big a pleasure out of what they do, how they spend their spare time. Maybe they do. I hope they do. I know one thing: I never will regret being enjoying the hunting and fishing life. You know.
Well, absolutely.
And when I got started about 35 years ago, outdoor riding, Larry, you know, it opened up all kind of opportunities. I thought, man, this is a good life.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
I'm not going to tell you how long ago it was this year that I sold my first hunting article, but it's been beyond that.
Yeah, I know, buddy. I know.
It's been beyond that. I've been so very fortunate as you're sitting here thinking about people who play golf or play tennis, and you know, all those to me are great things to do. But they're not really for me. I've never played tennis. Hit a few tennis balls with a baseball bat. Hit a few golf balls with a baseball bat. The only time I've ever spent time on a golf course is when I was a little kid. My dad and I followed the set of my dad's coon hounds across.
I remember you telling me.
And I can't remember which hole we treed that coon next to, but you know, that made an impression on me as far as golf. And the other time I was on a golf course was up in on an Indian reservation in Canada, where the snow was belly deep to me, and the only thing out there that wasn't belly deep snow was the greens at the golf course, kind of thing. So we hunted the greens on the golf course. Those are the only two times. And, you know, those are great memories as far as golf is concerned.
Yeah, right.
You know, but
but you could have been out jerking a crappie out of a creek, or maybe setting up shoot a hog or something. No, yeah, it's all about, I guess. I think my wife always kids me about this, and it maybe there's a little truth to it, maybe there's not. I've always said, you know, I think people are like dogs, hunting dogs. There are people that are geared up. I've took people out and exposed them to some fun stuff. You know, not impressed, you know, not really. You could tell they weren't impressed or enjoying it. And then I've took other people out in my life to less than stellar outdoor happenings that just went nuts over it. Yeah. So I think some people are geared up. That's a good way to put it. Geared up to love, to enjoy the outdoors.
Yeah. It's fun to see, try to get younger people engaged in the outdoors as well.
Yeah.
I know Larry and I were talking a little bit last night, about the grandkids and stuff, and getting them, out in the woods, and getting them on the water to do that kind of stuff. And my daughter's a perfect example. I mean, as a young lady, she hunted with me and fished with me a lot. And today, it's it's not something she wants to do all the time.
Right. Yeah.
And I understand that, but I think the lessons she learned over time is, with the experiences in the outdoors, has been very valuable to her, in her life. And I think more kids really need to get into it and just experience it. It may not be your thing. Maybe tennis or golf is.
Which is
but
fine. Yeah.
That's absolutely fine. But you know what? There's a lot to be said about spending time in, out in the country, and enjoying what there is to offer out there,
No doubt. Well, guys, I tell you what, I have thoroughly enjoyed, I guess we could call it a walk down memory lane here, but I guarantee you, either one of you, and myself included, could sit here and one last thing. I wrote an article for a magazine not too long ago. You guys will be able to think a minute and respond to this.
Okay.
The article was images, I forget what title, it was about images in the outdoors that you remember. I'm talking about things you witnessed and seen that you'll never forget. And you have to think a little bit, but I know there's 3 or 4 things. I remember I was bow hunting up in I think it was Hayworth, Illinois, 10 years ago. And it was during the time it was bow season and the full moon was up. And I was hunting on what they call a creek.
A creek.
Yeah. I was hunting a creek up there, hunting a little creek, pretty good sized creek, up in a tree, looking down. And the moon was up there. And I looked up and I heard some mallard, I heard some duck, some whistling wings, and I looked up and there was 4 mallards and they circled, and the moon was right up there. They circled and it came right down, and that water looked like a piece of glass. Splat, 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 splat. I never will forget that. I mean, why that stuck in my mind, but that was a sight. A lot of sights like that.
One thing that I'll never forget was sitting in a blind right down here, probably 250, 300 yards from here. And it was, evening, and a dove flew in and landed underneath the feeder and was feeding. And I'm just sitting there watching this dove. And out of the corner of my eye, I see movement, and I turn my head, and this hawk was incoming. I mean, it was amazing. Well, the funny thing was, I had my video camera. It wasn't on at the time.
Of course not.
But I knew what was going to happen, and
Right.
I'm just like, oh my gosh. And it did. It hit that dove, and it just took off. It had the dove in its talons. I flipped my camera on it, and you can see him just, the hawk just leaving, and you see these feathers falling.
Filter
Yeah.
down.
And I'm just going,
Wow. You wouldn't have seen that if you weren't there.
sure wouldn't have. Amazing. Just unbelievable.
It is. And Larry, from yours, jaunts all over the world. I'm talking about.
I bet you've seen some stuff.
Most continents, from Kyrgyzstan or wherever. Where you
I haven't been to Antarctica.
No.
I'm not going.
No reason to go, is it? I don't know about the deer.
I'd rather go golfing.
I've heard that.
I've no desire to go, eat penguins or anything.
I've heard
like
the
that. I
deer
don't
herd
think-
down there is just not what it's supposed to be.
I think it kind of literally sucks on deer herd. As you guys were talking, I was trying to remember so many different memories that I've had, and so many visual memories, and there are just so many of them. And to say, okay, this was better than this one. One that very quickly comes to mind, I was in New Zealand, of all places, and it was a very foggy morning, and we were sitting there and we were glassing, and you could hear red stags going, roars all around us. And I looked down this little avenue kind of thing. It was kind of trees covering, and sun is kind of somewhere back here in the background, so it's backlit on the fog. And out of this fog comes this huge red stag, and he stops right in the middle and does a roar.
Man.
But there's so many other things that come to mind, the sights that I've been fortunate to see, and particularly a lot of time I spent in Africa, and I've been in Australia and, of course, New Zealand, and some of the European things I've been able to do, and hunted South America, and, of course, all over North America, and There are just so many of those things that come back that just about the time I'm thinking about it, and I think, man, that's really good, and another one pops up.
Exactly.
And I think that's been one of the great things I've been so fortunate and blessed. I grew up in a rather poor situation working, when you weren't in school, you worked from 2 hours or 3 hours before daylight to school time, and then you worked until late at night when you got home in the different livestock businesses we were in. But then you think about the people that you were with and the smiles that I saw in my 2 daughters and my 4 grandsons and granddaughter, being there with them when they turned around after having sitting on my lap and they've just shot their first deer, kind of thing. And you see their faces, and to me, I think those are probably as fantastic a memory as of all those majestic sights I've seen in the mountains. Yep. Kind of thing. I think those are even more special. Maybe not a whole lot above some of those things,
Yeah.
but certainly above everything
sure.
that I can remember.
Yeah.
Cool stuff.
It is. Well, guys, I tell you, we could go on and on. I just had that last one, those images that came to my mind, and I knew you'd have images that you remember.
Lots of them.
Lots of it.
Lots
good.
and lots.
I got a little more room up here for a few more.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's do. Let's go make some more
Let's do that.
memories with images, and then we'll have another. I enjoy talking, revamping some of the things that I've done. And let's do this again. What do you say?
Sounds good. Well, folks, thank
Without
you.
a doubt.
We'll be back on A Sportsman's Life.
Folks, as an old outdoors writer, I have used lots of products. Smoking Tex electric smokers, the best smokers that you can find. This is Diz and this is Scott, my buddies. Diz, tell them how they can learn more about Smoking Tex.
Yeah, obviously the #1 source of information is going to be our website. It's got hundreds of recipes, it's got helpful guides, it's got all of our models and our accessories listed there. Of course, we have a phone number, 888-922-1511, and we'll actually answer our own phones.
That's true. And Diz, the main thing, the easy way, smokingtex.com. You can learn all about it.
Correct. And of course, we're on all the social media, Instagram, Facebook, etc. So take a look at us whenever you can, and whatever social media you'd like, and we look forward to working with you.
Well, folks, it is your old buddy Luke, and it's time for an outdoor cooking segment, I think. It's been a little while since we've had one of these, but I bet all of you enjoy fresh bread cooked at camp in a Dutch kettle. Maybe you've never had it, but we're going to show you right here how easy it is. Now, we're going to go outside in a little bit, and I'm going to, put all this in the Dutch kettle with the coals, and we're going to actually bake this good bread. But we start off with 3 cups of all-purpose flour. Now that's in this bowl right here. That's what you're looking at. And 2 teaspoons of active yeast. You can see that if you look real close. I've just sprinkled it on the top there, the active yeast. 1 teaspoon of salt. And over here is 1 1/2 cups of water in the bowl here. Of course, this is the yeast. I'm using Fleshman's active dry yeast. So, this is such a simple recipe, but this is the start of it right here. Basically, I'm going to take the water here, pour it in there, and just knead this bread real well. Now, I like a little bit of a tangy taste to bread that I cook in a Dutch kettle. So we're going to leave it in the refrigerator for a couple of days, and it'll almost be the flavor of sourdough bread, but it's going to be really good. So I'm going to mix all this up, put it in the refrigerator, and get it ready for camp. And then when we resume here, we're going to be at camp and we're going to use the Dutch kettle and bake the bread. So stick with me. Well, folks, I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to get us some charcoal going right here. It's a little bit too wet out here at camp to build this fire on the ground. I've got this it's actually a little old grill, but I use it for a lot of my Dutch kettle cooking. We've got 25 briquettes, and I thought it'd be more important for you to see what I'm doing than to see me in it. I'm kind of a one-man show out here. But we're going to get these briquettes until they're white. And then I've got our, you remember the dough, the bread that I had all mixed up? Well, I've got it in a Dutch kettle right here. It's already in the bottom of the Dutch kettle. put a little oil in there so it wouldn't stick. So what we're going to do is let these briquettes get white hot, and then we're going to put this dough, this bread dough, down in here, and I'm going to tell you how I position the charcoal briquettes. You don't want too many underneath it. It's important to have you know, the majority of them up on top. So let's let our coals get just right, and then we'll start, we'll put our Dutch kettle on there and get our bread to cooking. How about it? Okay folks, we have our Dutch kettle loaded with coals, and this is the part that I want you to really track with me on. On top, you see, you know, a Dutch kettle has the recessed lid. We have 10 coals on top scattered around. Now you can't see it, but right down in the bottom down here, underneath in the very center is 4. It's distributed around 4 coals, and then around the perimeter of it, you'll see these coals all the way around the base. There's probably 12 coals. They're not in the middle, they're just on the perimeter, on the outside at the bottom. So what we're going to do is let this cook about 20-25 minutes, and then by then the aroma is going to probably be getting the best of me. But about 20-25 minutes, I'm going to use some vice grips and pull the top off of this, and we're going to test it. It may have to cook another 10 minutes, but that's, you know, kind of cold out here today, so that's the only way we'll know is to really check it. So let's let it cook for about 20 more minutes. We got our bread in there. It'll start steaming and smelling really good here in a few minutes, but let's pull the top off in about 20 minutes and see how it looks. What do you say? Well folks, here is what's left of the finished product here. You can tell my fellow hunters here wanted to take a quick sample, and I do get a big thumbs up on this. I sampled some of it too with some butter. Simple to make in a Dutch kettle, folks. Camp bread. The crust is a little, you know, little chewy, which is the way we like it, but it's very, very tender on the inside. You can see the look of it there, but that's you can do this too just as easily as I did. Camp bread, folks, and if you maybe forget some of the ingredients, you know, just rewind this little video. We went over it in the very beginning, exactly what you need to do. Hope you enjoyed it. Wish you were here with me. We'd have us some buttered, fresh-made hot bread.
Folks, thank you so much for joining us here on our Sportsman's Life. I mean, what a great adventure we had today again, and looking forward to another great adventure next week, huh boys?
You betcha. I'm ready to go.
I'm not. I want to stay right here. Y'all join us next week.
And a special thanks to these fine sponsors: Air Force Air Guns, B&B Charcoal, Dallas Safari Club, Hornady, Pyramid Air, Nielsen Specialty Ammo, Sightmark, Smokin' Tex, Snap Block Hunting Blinds, Texas Raised Hunting Products, and Striper Express.